Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Stephanie Cooper, and I am the Deputy Commissioner for Policy and Planning here at MassDEP. And I am here to welcome you to today's meeting that I will be chairing. As you know, the purpose of our meeting is to inform the Department's consideration of a petition from the Conservation Law Foundation and Toxics Action Center relative to rulemaking approach for PFAS in drinking water. PFAS, as I'm sure many of you know, stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, which we will refer to as PFAS or PFAS during the rest of the course of this presentation. As I said, I know many of you are quite familiar with the issues around these substances, this class of chemicals that were used commonly in manufacturing and creation of consumer products, creating non-stick surfaces, a range of different types of products that are resistant to oil and grease, and also used in firefighting foam. So they're pretty much ubiquitous in the environment. You'll hear a lot more about this during the course of the meeting. It's an issue that many states are spending a lot of time on. It's been an issue of great focus and priority to our agency. It's also something that many federal agencies are spending time on, and the advocacy community and concerned citizens and stakeholders. So my role today will be to give you an introduction, to set a little bit of context, and I'm going to review the agenda to start with so everyone knows how we're going to go through today's program and what to expect. But first, I just want to do a couple of simple housekeeping details just to make sure everyone is familiar with the environment and is comfortable. First of all, outside the door here, there is a water cooler you may have seen. Feel free to help yourself. For restrooms, down the hall you take a left out of the conference room, a right at the end of the hall are restrooms. I want to let everyone know that we are live streaming this meeting so that folks who are interested in seeing the meeting who can't be here today are able to do that. So that we have that going on. We also have a member of the media here doing some filming, so just want people to be informed of that. We have scheduled our meeting to go to wrap up at noon today, but especially given the crowd of interested people before me, we expect that it may run over that time. And we do, the most important thing to us is to hear from the petitioners in full and to hear from all of you today to inform our consideration of this petition. So I think with that, I will turn to the meeting overview. Introductory remarks, that's what I'm doing right now. I'll have some more to say in a couple of minutes. After I wrap up, I'm going to introduce our petitioners who are here today at the front table. We have Heather Govern and Jen Duggan from the Conservation Law Foundation and Shana Casper from Toxics Action Center. And they are going to give a presentation. We've asked them to take time that they would like to have to present their petition, to amplify on the various points, and to clarify anything that they see fit to do. We will then have feedback from attendees. And I just want to make sure anyone who's interested in speaking today has had the opportunity to sign up. We had staff here right outside the door. Again, this is Ann Lowry, our Assistant Commissioner for Planning and Evaluation. And so if you'd like to sign up, you still have, please take the opportunity to do that. And I also want to, I do want to note that two things. This is not, by far, is this the only opportunity to give feedback to the department. We'll be asking people to limit comments in order to reach that goal of hearing from everyone. So we're asking people to limit their presentations to 5 minutes, but we will be happy to receive your written comments. We would ask that you do that by close of business tomorrow, and you'll understand why in a moment when I talk about the petition process. And then, just to be clear that the department's actions going forward, rulemaking that we may undertake, all of that follows a public process with robust opportunity for public comment. So please just keep that in mind as we go through today's program. The other thing I just want to sort of set an expectation and be clear about when you see many of us scribbling notes is that we are very much in listening mode today. So we have a number of staff here today. We will be taking a lot of notes. Yes, we are recording the proceedings, but we want to sort of be taking it in live format too, and recording the high points and the themes that we're hearing today. So you will see that happening in our agenda. In order to have the opportunity to hear from the most people, there's not really a sort of an interactive dialogue opportunity with the agency today. Rather, we're taking all the information in. So I just want to be clear about that. After we have the opportunity for stakeholder input, we will have a presentation detailing some of our department's recent actions on PFAS, and there have been many of them. So at that time, you will hear from our Assistant Commissioner for Water Resources, Doug Fine, who you saw already, Paul Block, our Assistant Commissioner for Waste Site Cleanup, and Mark Smith, our Director of the Office of Research and Standards. And then I will come back to wrap up and let you know what the next steps are, what is the process, what are additional resources that you may be interested to avail yourself of. So with that, I'm going to continue with the context setting here. So as I mentioned, we are here today to hear more about the petition that we have received from Conservation Law Foundation and from Toxics Action Center, and to seek input from stakeholders on the department's consideration of it. Under Massachusetts general laws, any person, any individual can petition a state agency to adopt a regulation. And so it's under that statute that this petition comes before us. MassDEP has its own regulation that requires the department to host a meeting, this meeting today, to consider the petition, and within 10 days of that meeting to notify the petitioner of its action. We will, of course, be notifying the public of that as well. The rest of the context I'd like to set is to talk for a minute about sort of the federal framework for rulemaking and protection of drinking water, and then to just quickly hit sort of the headlines or the highlights of some of our PFAS work, knowing that there is a presentation later in our program that will detail that. So the Safe Drinking Water Act is the key federal law for protecting public drinking water supplies from harmful contaminants. You see some information here about it. I think the thing that's important to keep in mind is that EPA's national drinking water regulations establish the basic program for regulating the nation's public water systems. And you see here the top bullets talk about how that rulemaking process works and some of the factors that are considered: health impacts, frequency and occurrence of the contaminant, benefits, cost, and feasibility of a proposed standard. In Massachusetts, EPA has delegated primacy to DEP for enforcing requirements of these national drinking water regulations and of the Safe Drinking Water Act. So it's our job to enforce these standards and in adopting our own state standards, ensure that they are at least as stringent as what EPA has set, but they can also be stricter, and they often are. Drinking water regulations apply to publicly and privately owned water systems, and there's a particular definition of those, but just to say they vary greatly in size and type. They range from large municipal or regional systems to homeowner associations and campgrounds. EPA promulgates regulations for contaminants that may pose public health risks, and there are two sort of major types, so I'll just mention this quickly, knowing that you're going to hear more about it from the petitioners. They're legally enforceable standards for water systems. In most cases, but not nearly in all, EPA standards take the form of a maximum contaminant level, which is establishing a ceiling for a particular contaminant in water that is delivered to consumers. EPA has set more than 75 of what people refer to as MCLs for shorthand for various contaminants. In instances where there is no reliable method that is economically and technically feasible to measure a contaminant to determine public health, EPA may set a treatment technique to measure a treatment technique, which is an enforceable procedure or level of technological performance. And EPA has done that in at least 10 instances that we are aware of. And I want to note here that most DEP regulations mirror EPA rules, mirror those national standards that are set, but not always. And we have the authority to set standards at the state level. And one example here is perchlorate. So with that, I'm turning to sort of the headlines of our PFAS work before I introduce our petitioners. Last June in 2018, we issued a public health guideline to address 5 PFAS chemicals, so the sum of 5 PFAS chemicals, setting that guideline at 70 parts per trillion. Our Office of Research and Standards, who you'll hear from later, did that work based on consulting with a group of outside experts, with our Department of Public Health, with other states, looking at health and scientific data, the best information that was available to us at that time. When we did that, we worked very closely with public water suppliers who we oversee to ensure that they could comply with and meet this standard, and they have. We also have instituted a requirement for public water suppliers in seeking approvals for new drinking water sources to sample for PFAS. So we look at that information and we ensure that that the water is okay before we would certify a new source. So that's specific to PFAS. In addition, we issued interim guidelines under our waste site cleanup program under the Mass Contingency Plan, interim guidelines for PFAS for cleanup sites for groundwater and soil issues. We, in addition, under that same authority, we are able to, and we have spent a lot of time investigating the sources of PFAS. And so we've been doing that under that authority to figure out where contamination is coming from so that those responsible parties can be held legally responsible. I alluded to PFAS in firefighting foam, which has been a major source of this contaminant, and our department has implemented a firefighting foam collection program where we, working with the Department of Public Safety, it's a take-back program. So for older firefighting foam, AFFF it's referred to collect that material, dispose of it properly, thereby eliminating a potential source of groundwater contamination. So that's been very successful, and we feel like that's a really important step that we've been able to take. We've developed a lot of online resources which are targeted at the public, at public water suppliers, at various stakeholders to give good information, to share some of that best scientific information that we're considering and how to deal with this ubiquitous contaminant. What's listed under forthcoming, I'll just mention, these are actions that we have been working on at the time that we received this petition, and certainly the petition will be informing one of the actions, and that's the action at the bottom, which is developing draft drinking water regulations and standards. So it comes at a good and appropriate time for us in the process. At the same time, because the science and the health information is evolving so quickly, we do anticipate that we will be reconsidering our public health guidelines, what we refer to as the ORSG. So that's something that we do believe we'll be doing going forward. I mentioned waste site cleanup in a couple of contexts, and we will be proposing draft regulations under the Massachusetts Contingency Plan that will establish soil and groundwater cleanup standards for PFAS. So that's just giving you a sense of sort of where we're headed and what we've been working on, which, as I said, has been a top priority here at MassDEP. So with that, I would like to introduce our petitioners, and I'm going to, there we go, get to the first slide. And so I would like to introduce Heather Govern, the Director of the Clean Water Program for the Conservation Law Foundation, and Jen Duggan, the Vermont Director for the Conservation Law Foundation.